Blue.
Oh, we'll have Steve Robertson in a couple of minutes here. Talk a little college football, SEC. Out of Bounds, 105.9 The Zone, ESPN, WRKS. We're streaming live on the Out of Bounds radio app. You can watch the show right now. I feel like I should just give away, like, booze. Just left and right. I mean, 21 and older, obviously. But I'm glad that I remember to do disclaimers now. Feel good about that. SEC Insider Hit this morning is brought to you by Ace Bolt and Screw, powered by DeWalt Tools. Opening a new location in the Gluckstadt, Madison area. Ace Bolt and Screw, powered by DeWalt Tools. Downtown Jackson, Julian Street. Tupelo, Atlanta. And coming to Gluckstadt, Madison County. Ace Bolt and Screw, powered by DeWalt Tools. Want to welcome you in. Hope you're doing well. Hope you had a good weekend. I had a good weekend. I had a really good weekend. But I'm not happy that this nonsense continues to unfold. And we think that we're just going to, kick the can down the road forever until this perfect time. And that's just not realistic. One thing that we do know is that young people are little to no risk. And here's the deal, Blake. These guys want to play. Is the only shot of the SEC playing and maybe ACC Big 12 is that the players are going to will this? Maybe too late.
Maybe players and coaches. I don't know. There may be some coaches.
Yeah,
I mean, Sam Pittman came out just a few minutes ago and tweeted out, "We want to play." I mean, everybody. It's such an interesting dynamic, just what's going on, and it's. I mean, I guess are we that surprised given what's happened in the past that academics and true political, powers want to kick the can down the road? I mean, isn't that what they've been doing for decades?
Yeah, and here's what I said. Can we play the week of November 7th? That's after the election.
Yeah, right.
Whoever wins, can we play? Can we just schedule November 7th to play?
I just don't understand it. It's chaos.
Yeah. This thing has been politicized. Oh, man. All right. Out of bounds.
Hunter Yurachek tweeted out, "We want to play."
Carey. Yeah,
that's the AD of Arkansas. Yeah, there you go. So
he's the guy that gave double birds to Jimmy Sexton.
Yeah,
maybe.
he did. Yeah, he did.
If you believe the rumor mill, the coaching carousel rumor mill. Carey, shout out Edwin Watts Golf Shop. Carey said, we need everybody to play golf. Well, that's pretty much happened since March. I mean, record rounds around the country, but definitely the Southeast. And then I think hunting and fishing it's already popular. Good grief. The numbers are going to be insane for hunting and fishing. Insane. WRKS, ESPN 105.9 The Zone. You can watch the show right now on YouTube Live. Search Out of Bounds Sports. We welcome in Steve Robertson, Hailstate Insider. Steve, I'm not happy. All this Big Ten, it looks like they'll cancel today. Pac-12 will fold like a cheap suit. What do you think? Can the SEC, Big 12, and maybe the ACC hold the line?
Yeah, I think it's a possibility. And I'll tell you, Bo, it's last night when I got ready to shut things down, which ended up taking till about 2 in the morning, I said, what, this thing is over. I shared with some friends and family and some other people. I said, what, this is it's a sad day in college athletics, but looks like we're not going to have college football. And then before I finally turned the light out, all of a sudden I'd heard some things that made me think, what, this thing isn't over. It's actually just really beginnings. We have seen the players galvanize themselves and kind of take the leadership role here. And I understand now they have legal representation. And so now things are about to get awfully interesting. And I think one of the things that's there's some national media people that I spoke with yesterday and traded some messages with that I just don't think they get it. And one of the comments, and I'm not going to name the people because I don't want to shame anybody, even though I probably should, but it goes, it's okay for us to question what the adults are getting done. And I sit here and think to myself, this is the problem with the entire model, is that we're discounting these young people as children. We're not considering them adults or peers in some respects. We think we have to know what is best for them. And the adults that have acted irresponsibly in this deal are in leadership, in college football, and in the national media. And listen, I get it. This is a huge story. Everybody wants to break the big story. And I understand that the revenue-based clickbait media deal is important to a lot of people. But there are some people in our industry that are being used. Some are allies and participants in the propaganda, but there are others that are being used. This is a coup attempt from the Big Ten.
I was told this morning that the Big Ten's announcement, whenever this is, Steve, will not have any impact on the SEC. I don't believe that, because it's just the pressure, the media pressure, the political pressure, because once the Big Ten does it, the Pac-12 will do it. And so you'll have three left, SEC, Big 12, ACC. What have you been told as far as why the Big Ten did this like this way? Why they decided to go this direction? And the timing, they hadn't even started practice.
Yes, practice is supposed to start today. What's interesting, I'm told, and again, you can hear whatever you want if you talk to enough people, but I'm told by multiple people that the university president at Michigan has kind of been the linchpin in this whole thing. So, we really don't want to play, and we, think we're putting players at risk. And I understand that the state of Michigan's had some real issues. Even the Wolverine family has had some pretty significant issues having to deal with the COVID virus. But I understand that on Saturday that they had really kind of pushed and worked behind the scenes because, on Friday, everybody in that college football world was very hopeful. We thought, hey, okay, this is going to get done. It's not going to be what we wanted it to be, but it's going to be something. And then as soon as the SEC and Greg Sankey and the university presidents finalize, the opponents for the SEC schedule, everybody felt like, okay, at this point we can now exhale a little bit. And then less than 12 hours later, you get the Big Ten out here leaking information to national media saying, hey, we're about to cancel the season. And I think that's the thing that you look at with all this is, the SEC is going to have to make a decision, and it won't be Greg Sankey. That's what I don't think a lot of people understand.
Right.
At the end of the day, it's going to be the 14 SEC university presidents that make this call.
Mm-hmm.
And so the SEC could end up being the hero here. You could be the national hero because, listen, it's just not feasible to expect the kids to play. The kids, I'm disrespecting myself, but it's disrespectful to expect those young people to play 2 seasons in the better part of 8 or 9 months.
Oh, I don't think they're playing in the spring. I think that's fairy tale, Steve. You kick
it down the road. Because not to mention how many players then would opt out to go. They're going to need to be getting ready for the draft and finding a trainer and that sort of stuff. It just not to mention if a kid has a season-ending injury in the spring season, he won't have adequate time to recover to play in the fall. That's just fool's gold.
Yeah. Steve Robertson, genespage.com, 247 Network on the Out of Bounds Show, talking college football and what all could shake out here any hour now, really, and over the next few days. Now, there's reports from, let's see, we've got some, you may have already seen this, Steve. There are reports from Andrew Perloff, who is a producer on the Dan Patrick Show, that obviously the Big Ten Pac-12 will cancel, and that, what was the number, Blake? 2 presidents voted to play, and the rest voted not to play in the Big 12?
Dan Patrick's reporting that Nebraska and Iowa were the only 2 schools voting to play in the Big 12, and they're also reporting that the SEC is trying to buy time to get an SEC-ACC Big 12 combination of games, where they at least those 3 conferences in some aspect play some level of a season.
Okay.
They're reporting that the Big 10 and Pac-12 have already voted, and it's done.
All right.
Bo, along those lines, the thing too that everybody mentioned yesterday about Pac-12, and you saw Brett McMurphy and some others, I guess Matt Hayes from college football, everybody kind of suggested that this unionization was part of the issue, and I understand that's really more of a concern with the Pac-12 because there was some threats about a player boycott, like you have some big ESPN game, Stanford or in Cal or whoever, and then when the national eyes are upon the stadium, that the players may elect not to play. I understand there was some threats of that happening, and which would bring even further embarrassment to the Pac-12, because that's where kind of the genesis of all of this, the Student Bill of Rights is kind of a, the genesis of all that is there. But the flip side of that is you and I both know once the Big Ten makes a call, the Pac-12 is going to go along with them because they just lack leadership out there. But I'm happy to hear that's being reported, because that was kind of the talk in the wee hours, is that there might be a way to get this whole thing done, because you got the SEC and the ACC really kind of control college football right now, and so if they decide to play, they could be the national heroes, and I think it makes the Big Ten look even worse.
Steve Robertson on ESPN 105.9 The Zone. Here, the problem is I don't have any confidence in university presidents or chancellors making tough decisions to grind through this, which really needs to be done. Steve?
Well, I think that's fair too, but here's the rest of that story is, the SEC had already decided to push the season back to kind of observe and see what happens. We still got over a month before that happens. That's the thing. When all this happened yesterday, I was asking myself, what's wrong with continuing to practice and then just kind of see how things go? Because if you look at the numbers nationally and even within our state, they're beginning to start to trend down a little bit. And so I think maybe that's an area of somewhat of encouragement. You can say, let's kind of keep doing what we're doing and see what the numbers do before we make a final decision. And so a lot can happen in the next 30 days. And so yesterday I was ready to – I said on our message board, I said, based on what I'm hearing, we need a miracle, but we just might get it.
Do you think there's any mitigation of liability if they don't play? You're still going to have kids on campus. I mean, exposure is exposure, liability is liability, whether it's a student going to econ class or whether they're, quote-unquote, going to work out this semester but not play, Steve. I mean, that sounds like nonsense.
What's complete nonsense about the whole thing is if you look at the protocols that the SEC put into place, the routine testing twice a week, 6 days and 3 days before competition. Okay, probably the safest people in America would be college football players. But now some people think, okay, well, if we don't tackle somebody, then we'll be okay. But let's just turn them loose, let them go back and forth, and then maybe unknowingly transmit the virus to people that are at risk in their families. How that would be safer makes no sense to me. And I mentioned this on my own show. Do you think that these college kids, and I know this for a fact, you want to go find Mississippi State's players at night? You go down to the Cotton District. That's where they are. They're not living in a bubble. They're not all at home, kind of hemmed up, with armed guards around them. They're down in the Cotton District. They're hanging out. They're partying. They're having drinks. They're seeing their friends. They're making out with girls. They're doing all this other stuff. But that's all okay, but they can't go tackle somebody else who's tested twice a week. It boggles the mind how stupid people are.
What do you think of the national college football writers that are almost giddy and celebrating this, Steve?
Yeah, I guess that's the biggest disappointment for me in our industry is the glee that some people have taken in all of this. And I shared with a guy yesterday. I said, some of you guys are so invested in being right, you've lost sight of your mandate. It's one of those things where we're not supposed to be cheerleaders for the sport. Well, actually you are. Actually, you are supposed to be a cheerleader for the sport, because without the sport, you don't have a dadgum job.
Right.
Stupid. Those are the things that really fire me up as I begin to think about these people that are just basically willful participants in the demise of college football. And that's one of the things that I think is important. I think we have got to stop supporting those people. I think you've got to stop aggregating their content. You've got to stop retweeting their stuff. You've got to stop sharing it on Facebook. Don't even share it to say, look how stupid this guy is. Just completely ignore them. Yeah. Completely ignore them. That's the way you beat them.
Steve Robertson on the Out of Bounds Show. Blake, you got a question for Steve?
Yeah, Steve, given what Dan Patrick is reporting or what they think is happening, it makes sense that the Big Ten and the Pac-12 are in this boat together. what do you believe, or do your sources believe, is the Big 12's allegiance? And then are there any outside opportunities that you could have in the case of the Big Ten if Nebraska and Iowa's presidents were okay with playing? Do you see any scenario where anybody out of the Big Ten or the Pac-12 deviates from what their conference has decided?
That's a great question, and I don't know that I could answer that. As far as the Big 12's allegiance, I was told last night the Big 12 wants to play, but they don't want to go it alone. And so, we'll kind of see how that shakes out. But, like if you look at the Nebraska and Iowa, yesterday we were trying to speculate because we were told there were only 2 dissenting votes in the Big Ten. And I even talked to Dave Murray. I said, who do you think it's going to be? He goes, I bet it's Ohio State and Nebraska. And it's funny how people think. People start looking, okay, what's the political affiliation of this state's governor, which is incredible to me that has permeated into the world of college football. It's absolutely ludicrous to think that people would make these kinds of decisions based on political issues. It's ridiculous. But be that as it may, I mean, I think that there is the possibility of us pulling something off, but it's going to be interesting. I spoke to somebody last night that I trust immensely, and I said, is this really happening? Are we really going to cancel college football when the numbers actually appear to be improving? And he goes, well, there's a real domino effect. With the Big Ten kind of pulling out, it kind of gives some cover for us from other people that maybe aren't sure. But it's going to be an interesting week, to say the least. It's already been an interesting day, and we're just getting started.
Can you believe that the Big Ten has gone about it the way they have, Steve? I mean, I'm following this guy, Michigan Podcast, on Twitter, and he's in trend. I mean, he's all into Big Ten football and Michigan football, and he is just lighting up the Big Ten leadership and basically saying, hey, they pulled a bait and switch. They never had any plans on playing. You don't think that's happening with the SEC, do you?
No, I don't. I don't
either. So back to the Big Ten. Can you believe that they have, they were the first to come out before everybody else, and as you know, Steve, all of them had been talking. They were the first to say, hey, we're only going to do conference only. And, of course, they, did that whole deal, and now they're canceling today. What do you make of their moves and the way they've approached this?
Well, based on some of the things I've heard in the last 24 hours, I think a lot of this has been very disingenuous. And I also think it's interesting. Listen, I've got a lot of respect for Kevin Warren. I'm not trying to say anything negative about him, but he is a new commissioner, and I think there are some people within that conference that they're driving a bus a little bit. That they're saying, hey, listen, this is what we're going to do. And as we said earlier, the university president's the one to make that call. But I don't know if, 2 or 3 years into this thing, after Kevin Warren's had a chance to maybe establish some allies, that this probably maybe doesn't happen. And I'm not trying to put the mantle on him, but I think it's people like the university president at Michigan that sees an opportunity to kind of throw their weight around. But I do think in hindsight, you look at all this, they just absolutely could not wait for everybody else to kind of get their ducks in a row. They wanted to be first. They wanted to get out and show some leadership. And now here we are trying to cancel college football season. And again, just go back to what happened Saturday morning. We weren't even able to get up and get moving yet before the Twitter world was on fire that the Big Ten was going to vote, had an unexpected meeting, which that was a lie. That meeting was already scheduled. And they were voting to cancel the season. And then within 20 minutes of those tweets making the rounds, the Big Ten issues a statement that says, we're going to continue to move forward. We're just not going to have padded practices. We're not going to go to phase 3 of football practice just yet, which everybody expected anyway, because we're not going to have 7 weeks football camp. And so then all of a sudden, okay, so we didn't get what we wanted from our national media college football pundits. So now all of a sudden we got to go back to the drawing board and start all of a sudden these anonymous clandestine sources, these sourced reports. It's incredible how agenda-driven some of our sports writers have been, and it's very, very disappointing.
When you out of bounds ESPN 105.9 The Zone, Steve Robertson joins us on the show in the Parish Brewing guest line. We're discussing the season and how this looks. Steve, what kind of impact will this have on recruiting if the SEC, Big 12, and ACC go and the Big 10 and Pac-12 do not?
Well, I think it'd be extremely beneficial to those conferences to play. I think that's a pretty easy sell. And you can say, hey, you never know what your university president's going to do if you go to Michigan. Oh, you really want to go to Ohio State? Well, good luck playing in the spring, playing in the snow. That's routinely going to happen. I think and I think you have to consider not just from PR standpoint, but a student athlete standpoint, kind of moving forward. Is you want to do what's best for student athletes, then one could make the argument you're better off playing the season in the fall than you are in the spring, just because of the fact that the wear and tear it's going to have on the body. But but also too, I mean, how much longer are you going to keep these guys in camp?
No.
When you're going to give them some time off. But I absolutely agree, Bo, and I think it's one of those things you look at from a recruiting standpoint, where this is the SEC and the ACC and Big 12 can come out smelling like a rose, because I think they can say, listen, we were the champions of college football. We were the heroes for your sport. This is why you need to come here. There's a lot of benefits. If they can pull this off and have a season, I think there are a lot of recruits and probably fans around the country that will remember this, not just for this year and next year, but for years to come, that these guys fought and tried to give us a little bit back of what we absolutely love.
I've only got a couple of minutes, but Dr. Mark Keenum is a huge football fan. He is maybe the longest tenured president in the SEC. If he's not, he's up there. You know how politically savvy he is. Chief of staff for Senator Cochran, served under George Bush, 2W, in his White House. So, Keenum may be a guy that's really trying to lobby and sell the other presidents and chancellors a way to get this done and to get the votes, Steve.
Well, I don't think there's any question. And one of the things about Dr. Mark Keenum, you better believe before he puts his name behind it or offers his vote or support, it'll be extremely well thought out. He'll be completely methodical with what he wants to do. He'll have all the answers. And if he doesn't, he'll have people around that can give those answers, And so, he is the dean president. Remember he's on the college football committee and everything. It's just
right.
One of those things where he's a big name in college football among the university presidents. And so I don't think this thing gets done without his support and his lobbying behind the scenes. Basically the attitude over the weekend was, when all this stuff began to kind of bubble up, and I was in contact with some people yesterday, I said, hey, you know what? A lot of uncertainty out there. We're just trying to navigate through this the best we can, and we're being careful. But the bottom line is, you made a decision last week. This is what we're going to do. And it's amazing to me, I'm sure you've seen this, if anybody in the Southeastern Conference probably deserves the right to push for the cancellation of the season, it's Arkansas. But then you've got Sam Pittman and Hunter Urick out there advocating for a season.
Yeah.
Nobody else has an excuse.
We'll leave it there. GenesPage.com, the Boneyard Podcast, Alpha Dog's book hitting mid-football season. Steve Robertson on the Parish Brewing guest line. Thanks, Steve. We'll talk soon. Appreciate it.
See you.
The Out of Bounds Show is brought to you by RPT and Rick's Pro Truck. Spray and bed liners, lift kits, accessorizing your Jeep or truck bumper to bumper. RPT new location in Gluckstadt, Madison County, ricksprotruck.com. ricksprotruck.com. Spray and bed liners, lift kits, getting your truck and Jeep ready for the road or hunting camp. All at RPT and Rick's Pro Truck with their new retail location in Gluckstadt, Madison County. Hour number 3 coming up.